Family. It's crucial to place me first in everything, regardless of the situation. Joseph's fever isn't a big problem, but I couldn't ignore what he just said. How could you say that? As a parent, your child should always come first. Why can't you understand that? When I brought this up, my husband Joseph said something shocking. The one providing financial support for the family is the most important. That means I should be the top priority in this household. If you can't fulfill that expectation, then it's better to part ways. In that moment, something inside me broke. Fine then, I'll leave. Yeah, go ahead. Well, you wouldn't be able to manage without my income anyway. Hi, I'm Camila, a 32-year-old homemaker. My husband, Joseph, and I tied the knot 6 years ago. Our little one, Luke, is 3 years old, and we currently live together as a family of 3. Initially, things were great between Joseph and me. We met on a blind date, and I was attracted to him for his job at a good company and his cheerful personality. We hit it off and started dating immediately, leading to our marriage a year later. In the early days of our marriage, Joseph was kind and supportive. He helped out with household chores and made our anniversaries and my birthdays special. Unfortunately, as time passed, his behavior changed, and he started treating me disrespectfully. At first, I tried to reassure myself that it's common for feelings to change over time in a marriage, but his behavior became too distant. He'd ask why I hadn't ironed his shirt and expected everything ready when he woke up. Taking care of Luke was tough, and I wished he'd handle his own clothes since he's not a child. He'd insist I obey him, claiming he provides for our comfortable life. To me, he acts like an immature husband, angry when things don't go his way. Bar's behavior started after Luke's birth, making it hard to consider divorce. I still have a problem. Joseph barely contributes to our budget. Despite earning $3,300, he allocates only $700 to our family, spending the rest on personal interests. It's insufficient, and we can't plan for retirement or Luke's education. Joseph insists it's enough and won't listen to my pleas. I've tried persuading him for our son's future, but he ignores me, leading to constant fights. He complains about my housework, but it's impossible to manage with just $700. To make ends meet, I cook small portions with cheap ingredients. I'm desperate for Joseph to understand and contribute more, but he remains unresponsive. It's usual to have the same dish often, but Joseph criticizes me, calling me a useless wife who can't cook. Our relationship soured, and I endured it until Luke turned 3. One evening, he got a high fever and I rushed him to the hospital. The ER was busy and we had to wait. When the doctor finally saw us, Luke got medicine and we went home. I took care of Luke, feeling relieved but exhausted. When Joseph came home, he demanded dinner right away. I apologized and was about to cook when he accused me of thinking he's an idiot for not having dinner ready. I was taken aback, trying to explain, but he continued to criticize. I apologized, but Luke had a high fever, so we went to the hospital. That's why I haven't had dinner yet either. I tried to explain calmly to avoid a fight, but Joseph wouldn't listen. His response was, "I couldn't care less if you haven't eaten. Just make sure my dinner is ready." I was shocked and told him about Luke's sudden fever. However, he insisted he was in charge and should be the priority. I couldn't ignore it. I said, "How can you say that? As a parent, you should value your own child above all else. Why can't you understand that?" Joseph responded unbelievably, stating that the one bringing in money is the greatest, making himself the top priority. At that moment, something snapped in me. I had hoped for Joseph to return to his kind self, but it seemed futile. He prioritized money over our child. I decided to leave. Joseph told me to get out, claiming I couldn't live without his salary. I agreed and said I would eat out. He suggested going to my parents' house to cool off. He left, thinking I was a weak housewife who couldn't do anything. I decided to show him what I'm capable of. While Joseph was away, I packed my bags. Luke still had a fever, so I waited until he felt better. I prepared to leave whenever I had the chance and took care of Luke in the meantime. The next day, Luke's fever had gone down and he was still sleeping in the morning. After dressing him, I went to the kitchen for breakfast and ran into Joseph on his way to work. He smirked, asking why I hadn't left yet, claiming I couldn't afford to. He mocked me for being a jobless housewife. His words angered me, and I wondered how he became so horrible. In our dating days and early marriage, he was at least a bit kinder and considerate. While contemplating this, my son woke up hungry but feeling better. After breakfast, Luke looked much better, so I decided to leave that day. I called my parents for a car pickup, and by mid-afternoon, we were at their house. Entering, I felt weak and almost fainted. My parents were concerned, asking if I was okay. I admitted trying to be strong throughout, protecting ourselves. My parents expressed shock at how much Joseph had pushed me around, realizing it was worse than mere harassment. "Hey, Grandpa, let's have some fun together." "Oh, absolutely. How about we go grab some tasty snacks?" "Snacks sound amazing right now." Dad took Luke out so I could take a break. "You should rest and lie down," Mom said, handing me some blankets. I thanked her and settled into my blankets, drifting into a peaceful nap. When I woke up a few hours later, it was already evening, and a delightful aroma filled the air. Turns out, Mom was busy cooking dinner. On the dining table, there was a colorful spread of dishes, all looking incredibly delicious. Luke, with excitement in his eyes, exclaimed, "It looks so tasty." Mom's cooking was so fantastic that it brought both physical and emotional satisfaction. "Feel free to stay as long as you need. Your focus should be on relieving stress," my parents kindly advised me. I felt like a huge burden was lifted from me. 2 weeks went by quickly as I took it easy. Then, out of the blue, Joseph showed up at my parents' place. Dad, staring at the intercom, asked, "What do you want to do?" I replied, "I don't want to see him yet." "Okay, head to the back," Dad said, handling Joseph himself. Despite Joseph's insistence on meeting me, Dad adamantly refused, and eventually, Joseph gave up and left. Later, when Dad filled me in, Joseph never brought up an apology. I believe he came over a week later because he couldn't manage the household on his own, and things were getting messy. But that's no longer my concern. I hope he realizes how challenging household chores can be. I mean, he used to help me with the chores, so he just needed to recall what he did before. I think he just forgot because he's not accustomed to doing it. On my way back to my parents' house, I blocked Joseph's number, making the only way for him to talk to me in person. I avoided returning to the bar and stayed at my parents' house with Luke. During that time, my husband tried visiting me several times, but Dad turned him away each time. Then 1 month passed since I left with Luke. Joseph was truly at his limit and desperately pleaded, "Please let me see your daughter, please," while bowing to my father. Sensing it was time for me to meet with him, I asked Dad to let Joseph through the living room to see him, with Luke being taken by my mom to wait in the back room. Joseph, who I hadn't seen in ages, appeared quite disheveled. His hair was messy and his clothes looked worn and grimy. Despite arriving after work in a suit, his jacket, pants, and shirt were so creased that it made me wonder if he had slept in them. "Camila, you've surely had your fill by now. Let's head home," were his first words upon spotting me after a prolonged absence. In that instant, my hope diminished further, and an impenetrable emotional barrier formed between us. Escaping from this person became my immediate priority. "I'm not sure what's on your mind. If you're not planning to speak up, fulfill your responsibilities as my wife," Joseph uttered, even with my father standing right beside me. My dad seemed quite surprised because Joseph echoed precisely what I had shared with Dad earlier. "Is that the extent of your response?" "Typically, an apology would be in order," I retorted. Joseph gazed at me with curiosity. "Why should I apologize to you when it was you who left me and neglected household responsibilities? I made an effort to reach out after you acted selfishly." Is he serious? I can't assist him if he maintains that mindset. If that's the case, there's nothing more I can do. Let's conclude our marriage. With that decision, I handed Joseph the divorce papers I had prepared upon returning to my parents' house. "Divorce? Why are you bringing this up out of nowhere? Don't be naive. Do you realize how much you've hurt and distressed me? If anything, I should have requested an earlier divorce from you. You rely on me to handle tasks you don't want to do, and you're not actively involved in raising our child. Additionally, your financial contribution to our family is quite minimal. Supporting a family of 3 on just $700 a month is incredibly challenging. Can't you see that? It seems like your priorities are mainly focused on yourself. Joseph appeared surprised, probably not anticipating my level of frustration. He argued that I've been managing with what he's been contributing and even mentioned that the meals have been decent lately. Did he think I wasn't putting in any effort? I've taken up remote work because the money you provide is insufficient. Oh, really? Realizing I needed to create a better environment for Luke, I actively sought a remote job. Eventually, I landed a position as an English teacher. Having lived in the U.S. as a child, I was fluent in English. My pronunciation wasn't far off from a native speaker, and I had a background in English literature from studying abroad at a university in Japan. It all seemed like a good fit. Upon starting my teaching job, I wanted to make learning English enjoyable, so I delved into Western movies and music. I decided to craft my teaching materials by collecting phrases useful in daily life. Knowing many English learners appreciate Western entertainment, I tailored my materials to each student's preferences. This approach resonated well with the students, and they began seeking my assistance. Consequently, I started earning a decent income. When asked about my earnings, I revealed it's around $3,000 per month. The surprising amount left the other person astonished. With this income, I pointed out that I no longer needed to rely on living together. Joseph was completely shocked by this revelation. He was surprised to find out that his wife, whom he thought was not as successful as him, was actually earning more than him. Why do I suddenly feel so down? He wondered aloud. His worries poured out. His coworkers were getting promotions ahead of him, and even those junior to him were progressing faster. He felt like everyone saw him as foolish, and to make things worse, his wife had a higher income. In response, he released a big sigh. So what? Huh? She asked. Whether your salary is lower or higher than others around you doesn't matter. What's important is whether you and your family are happy. For Luke and me, your job title isn't significant. What counts is that you make time for your family and ensure you provide for them adequately. Don't you think so? I don't want you to harm me just to defend your fragile ego, he replied. Hush, she snapped. A man needs to face challenges, and he shouldn't falter in doing so. At this moment, her father, who had been quiet, chimed in. So, you're attempting to bolster your self-worth by unloading work stress onto my daughter. You invest heavily in your own interests and wardrobe to alleviate stress, all the while neglecting your family. Joseph looked uneasy in response to her father's remarks. She stressed to her daughter, as a husband and father, the most crucial role for you is to be the main support pillar of this family. Sadly, it appears you only prioritize yourself. I can't trust that man with the well-being of my precious daughter and grandchild any longer. Please sign the divorce papers and leave. My dad was visibly upset, trying to control his anger in front of me, but he reached his breaking point. Joseph, fearing my angry dad, signed the divorce papers. He quickly apologized and left, bringing an abrupt end to our marriage. Later, I heard from a mutual friend that Joseph is spreading rumors about me, claiming he left because I was a lousy and useless wife. However, his colleagues at work are well aware of his true nature and dismiss his false narrative. No one wants a person like Joseph as their boss, so he remains stuck in the same position without any promotion for years. A new colleague once mocked him for not being promoted despite his age, insinuating he couldn't handle his job. Joseph left embarrassed, and it seems that once a person develops a twisted personality as an adult, it's challenging to change. I decided to raise Luke with love and care, hoping he'd become an honest child by using good examples and not following the bad behavior of Joseph. Luke now smiles at me with an adorable and carefree expression, showing no signs of turning into someone like Joseph. To safeguard his wonderful smile, I am committed to working hard every day. Joseph, in contrast, is foolish, ruining others' happiness to protect his own fragile ego. I'm relieved that Camila managed to divorce Joseph swiftly. Otherwise, both she and Luke might have faced difficulties. I'm confident that with Camila's income, she can successfully manage as a single mother and provide a good life for Luke.